Kia ora. Alright, welcome back guys, part 2 urinary system. Right, so with your anatomy and physiology workbooks, I want you to turn to page 59. And on page 59, you have a colourful drawing of what we call a nephron. Now, a nephron is the working cell unit which actually does all the filtration in the kidney. So there are millions of nephrons within the kidney, and it's the actual nephron that you can't see to the naked eye that does the filtration system. I hope that makes sense to you. So all these nephrons are found, and let me get this little page up, all these nephrons are found all in the medulla, all around in the pyramids and up into the cortex as well. So there's lots of millions and millions, and there's a few pictures we're going to see later on where you can see that where they sit within the kidney as well. Gives you a bit of an idea. So we're going to label this nephron, all right, and we're going to label it as, and as we go, we're going to start teaching little bits as we go, all right? So the first part of the nephron is this group of capillaries. So I hope you remember what capillaries are. Capillaries are blood vessels, but they're super, super thin. And they're super thin because they allow an exchange. They allow things to come out, gases, and they allow goodness to get back in. So that's what the difference is. So this group of capillaries, which is red, is called your glomerulus. Can you please label that? So this little group of capillaries is called your glomerulus. Just the red, just the red. It's number 3 on top where the word is. You could just put number 3 there if you want. Now here, whatever can get out of the capillaries, whatever can leave the blood, whatever can escape through the little gaps, whatever can get out, will get out of the capillaries, and it will sit in this C-shaped cup here. The C-shaped cup. You can see it in your books really, really clear. And this C-shaped cup is called your Bowman's capsule. Bowman's capsule. So the orangey, just the C-shaped cup, it's called your Bowman's capsule. This one here. It's not labelled on here, but we have to label it. Right, so now whatever's got out of the blood is in the tube, and it stays in the tube for a little while, okay? So we're going to call this a tube because it is a tube. You've got to remember that. It's a tube, but the tube is made up of cells, and the cells are wafer thin. And the cells are so thin because also you're going to learn things can get out of the tube and chemicals can get into the tube. But we'll learn that as we go along. Okay, so whatever's got out of the blood is now in this tube. It's got out into the Bowman's capsule, new word, just this C shape here. And now the substances that have got out the blood is called filtrate. All right, so whatever's got out of the blood, so coming out of the blood, there could be water, there could be gases, there could be sodium, there could be chemicals, there's going to be all sorts. Whatever could squeeze through the gaps got out and got into the Bowman's capsule. Whatever got out and got into the Bowman's capsule has a new name, and collectively together is called filtrate. So this filtrate squirts along this tube here. And can you see this tube and the mouse that where I'm moving the mouse, this first part of the curly tube? This first part of the curly tube is called your proximal convoluted tubule. So it's number 5 up at the top of your book of 59. The proximal convoluted tube starts as it leaves the Bowman's capsule. It's proximal because proximal means closest. So it's closest, and we're going to call this the main part. The glomerulus and the Bowman's capsule is the main part. It's proximal because it's closest to that. It's convoluted because it's curly. It's wavy. Okay, and tubule because it's a tube. So a proximal convoluted tube starts at leaves the Bowman's capsule and ends approximately around here, roughly. There's no dead line. You can see it actually gets smaller as it goes here, but this is the area you want to say. So put a line here and a line here, and you can highlight this. This is called your proximal convoluted tube, and we're going to learn what happens there afterwards. but we want to know about parts. Now the filtrate is traveling along this tube and it has to go down this loop. Can you see it gets a skinny loop? Okay, this loop here, it called your loop of Henle, and it's number 7 in your book. So the loop here is not labelled on this picture, but you need to label it on your books. It's called your loop of Henle. Weird name, but hey, it is what it is. Cool. So the filtrate, let's go from the beginning. Whatever can leave this network of capillaries, which is called your glomerulus, leaves and gets captured into this capsule, which is called your Bowman's capsule. When the substances have left the capillaries and it's in the Bowman's capsule, it's called filtrate. The filtrate moves along the tube. Okay, this fluid, this filtrate moving along this tube, and this tube is called your proximal. Well done. And it carries on its journey, okay, down this long tube here, and this long tube is called your, well done. And now it's taking its journey up to this curly part of the nephron, and this curly part of the nephron is called your distal convoluted tubule. Distal because it's in the distance from the main part here. Convoluted because it's curly, and tubule because it's a tube. So roughly where it leaves the loop of Henle, this part of the tube is called your distal convoluted tube, which is number 8 in your book, and then it ends here. Okay. At the end of the distal convoluted tube, all the filtrate leaves and comes into a larger tube called your collecting duct. Your collecting duct. Cool. So that's some, you've labelled some of the nephron, okay? We're just going to go on and label a little bit more. So that was just the nephron tube. Now we're going to learn a little bit more about the blood vessels that surround it, okay? There's 2 new bits of terminology that you're going to learn. Let me just pull this line down. And it's called afferent and efferent. So on page 59 at the top, number 1 and 2, there is the afferent arteriole and there's the efferent arteriole. Okay, first of all, arteriole is an artery but smaller. It goes artery, arteriole, and then it goes even smaller again to capillaries. After then it's gone through the capillaries and had some gas exchanges, it then goes to your venules, to your veins, but we'll talk about that after anyway. Okay, so I've told you that the glomerulus is the main engine, isn't it? It's the main part where all the filtration starts, where it starts. So there's this arteriole going in to the main engine. Now, anything going towards in anatomy and physiology is called afferent. Afferent, think of A at the start, carries on. So afferent is going towards. So this afferent artery is going towards the glomerulus. Then there's an arteriole that is leaving the glomerulus and starts entwining around all the tube, isn't it? That one that leaves, this one here, this tiny, tiny, tiny arteriole that leaves the glomerulus is called your efferent, E-F-F-E-R-E-N-T. Think of E for exit, leaving, exit. So afferent goes into the glomerulus, efferent arteriole exits out. Cool. So you've labelled that there as well. Now, all around the nephron, you can see red and blue blood vessels. All of these tiny blood vessels, which have a big part in filtration, which we'll learn about afterwards, these all red and blue are called your peritubular capillaries. Now, when we did the muscular system, we learned about epimyosin, perimyosin, and endomyosin. So peri means around. So all these tiny capillaries are around, surrounding the nephron tube. So they're tubular, around, tubular, the tube, capillaries. Cool. Right, so you've labelled the nephron. Now you need to learn how the magic happens, eh? Okay, so I hope you've labelled it. I just want to go through. There's a pathway, because once you get in your head the pathway, then the next part becomes a lot easier. So the blood goes into the afferent arteriole, which then ends up in the glomerulus. In the glomerulus, whatever can get out of the blood, whatever it can get out of, will get out. And all that substance, all those chemicals, all that water, everything good and bad is collected in the Bowman's capsule. That Bowman's capsule collects all those substances, and then we call it filtrate. That filtrate goes on a journey, okay, just like it's going down a slippery slide or what have you in the theme parks. Goes all on this journey. First part of the journey is the proximal convoluted tube. Goes down the tube, goes down to the loop of Henle, up the loop of Henle, and then it goes through the distal convoluted tube. And when it comes down the distal convoluted tube, it all joins together and called to the collecting duct. Easy. Easy, we say. Easy, she said. Okay, I will want you to watch these once you've learnt the next part. I want you to come back and watch these. I might play them with you because they have a good understanding of where they are. So I'm going to go to this part. Now, you've got your books in front of you, all right? We are going to explain what happens and how it works in the nephron. And then once we've learnt it, I'm going to go over it again on page 60, or you can write it in your book. This is a need to know as well, okay, for your online test. It's a need to know. So I will go through it carefully. Okay, so looking at your book, you can see the glomerulus. Point to the glomerulus. Now, no need to write anything down yet. I want you to understand it, then you can write it down, all right? So in the glomerulus, this is the glomerulus is a network of capillaries, and this network of capillaries filters the blood. Okay, so small products can leave the blood and enter the Bowman's capsule, which you know because we've talked about that. So whatever can get out of those capillary gaps will get out, and it will go into the Bowman's capsule. All right, so I hope you're with me. So whatever's got out of that blood is now sitting in the Bowman's capsule. So the job the Bowman's capsule has to do is just to hold on to those filtered products. Hold on to all those filtered products that has left the blood network, that has left the glomerulus. Cool. What happens then? That filtrate, use your finger, that filtrate, like I said, starts traveling up the proximal convoluted tubule, eh? Now, when that filtrate travels up the proximal convoluted tubule, some of the products in that filtrate system are good, and the body needs it back. Okay, so some electrolytes. We always need a balance of electrolytes, and electrolytes are what helps your muscles contract and so forth. Some of the electrolytes are sodium and potassium, and your body needs to have a really good balance of that. So this is just one example, all right? So the filtrate is traveling on the proximal convoluted tube, and the blood, the peritubular capillaries, have a look at the peritubular capillaries that are surrounding that proximal convoluted tube, carries hormones, and it realizes, I now have, let's pretend, I now have low sodium. Too much sodium has left the blood, and now I haven't got enough. So I need to reabsorb it back into the blood. All right. It might be that the person's dehydrated. So that filtrate goes up the proximal convoluted tube, and the blood peritubular capillaries go, I need to claim some water back. So the blood manages to reabsorb out of the proximal convoluted tube back into the blood and to reabsorb it back into the body. I hope this is making sense. So let's pretend that, they're real things and they can the cells that make this tube and the capillaries, they have little gaps, they have little tiny junctions, so substances can move in and out. Okay, substances can move in and out. So your key answer is, in your proximal convoluted tube, useful products are reabsorbed back into the blood. Right, so that filtrate carries on. It carries on down the loop of Henle. Now, stuff does happen there, but we don't need to learn so much, but you will see it in those YouTube clips, and don't let that worry you. And we don't even want to worry you with what type of chemicals and products. We just want you mainly to learn the words that useful products are reabsorbed out of the proximal convoluted tube back into the blood. So it goes up the loop of Henle and it gets to the distal convoluted tube. Now, in the distal convoluted tube, the peritubular capillaries, where all the blood is traveling around, massive volumes, huge volumes of blood travel around these nephrons on the outside of them. The blood capillaries have gone, I've actually got a bit more waste that I thought would have been filtered. I need to get rid of this waste out of my capillaries, out of the blood, and I need to put it back into the tube. I need to put it back into the nephron. So around the distal convoluted tube, waste products from the blood, the peritubular capillaries, get secreted back into the distal convoluted tube. So a lot of waste leaves the blood and goes into the distal convoluted tube. So by the time it gets to the collecting duct, it's mainly waste, hopefully. So there's a bit of to-ing and throwing. It's not very efficient, is it? So it gets into the glomerulus. Whatever can get out of that glomerulus will just get out. So let's just pretend you're it's like going shopping. Whatever can get into the shopping mall, especially this day and age, you want to get in. So you're going to get some shoplifters in there, and you're going to get some bad people, and you're going to get some dirty people, and you're going to get some honest people, aren't you, as well? So whatever can get out of the glomerulus gets out. Right? As long as you can fit through that door, it's out. Gets into the Bowman's capsule, all of us together, and we all start our journey along the shopping mall, so to speak. On the shopping mall, we come to the first part, and let's pretend we're going into a chemist, and that is your proximal convoluted tube. And I'm in there, and I'm like, oh, we're all in there, and we're all going, oh, this is a really good chemist. I really like this, but I don't know what's going on around me, and I think I'd rather be back outside in the main area. So what happened is the blood goes, oi, you and you, you're really good. I need you back. What are you doing in there? Okay, so they bring us back. The filtrate carries on along its journey, but what had happened is when they took us back, they also took some of the baddies as well. So when it gets to the distal convoluted tube, the blood goes, oh, I don't want this criminal in the blood, so we're going to chuck it back into the tube so it can get urinated out. So it goes back into the distal convoluted tube. So a bit of to and fro in. What I want you to remember is the word useful products reabsorbed back into the blood at the proximal. Then waste products are secreted from the blood back into the tubule. So turning on to page 60, when you understand that, I want you to fill it in the gaps at the bottom of page 60. Have a read through all of page 60. Don't let it overwhelm you with all the substances, but it does give you a really, really, really good example. I want you to go back to here, and I want you to watch these very short, small tubule videos. They're fantastic. To see if it does play while I'm on.